Welcome, everybody. I'm Sally Spencer-Thomas, co-chair of the Workplace Suicide Prevention and Postvention Committee of the American Association of Suicidology. Welcome to our webinar, Roadmap to Civility, with Sejal Thacker. Sejal is a practiced employment law lawyer since 2003, and her focus is mainly on harassment and discrimination. She started Train Extra in 2017, and she trains companies to create positive, safe, and respectful workplaces by providing effective and customized training programs specifically around the area of civility. This is part of the National Guidelines for Workplace Suicide Prevention. The guidelines are a collaborative partnership between the American Association of Suicidology, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and United Suicide Survivors International. The guidelines are comprised of 8 guiding principles and 9 practices, and today we'll be focused on the guiding principle of dignity protection. I will turn it over to Sejal.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to be here with all of you today as part of this collaboration to making suicide prevention, health and safety priority for all of us at work. So I'm going to be focusing in on dignity prevention today and really talking about how can we prevent despair in our workplaces and promote by fighting bullying, against bullying, harassment, discrimination, and prejudice, and uphold dignity with collaborative and respectful reintegration. Such an important topic, especially when we look at what we've gone through in the past year and a half. You know, we can no longer take a half-hearted approach to diversity, inclusion, and civility in our workplaces. I mean, we've seen drastic changes in our workplaces. We've seen COVID-19, civil rights movement, political divisions, a pandemic, which has forced us all to work remotely. And so all of these things on top of the systemic inequities that exist within our workplaces impact employees on all levels, including their mental health, their physical well-being, productivity, it's stifling innovation, and ultimately it's, organizations' brand and goodwill is really being questioned, and the lens is on organizations right now. So what can we do to make sure that we instill this core value within the fabric of our organizations? And so I'm going to talk to you about 3 different sort of approaches that we really want to make sure that organizations are taking a look at. And the first one is, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how do we disrupt uncivil behavior and microaggressions that are happening in the workplace. We realize now that research shows that the strongest predictor of incivility in the workplace is an organization's communication, the climate of what it's going to tolerate in the workplace. So we want to be proactive as opposed to being reactive and really call for a change within the culture of the organization. And we're going to talk about how do we create a comprehensive plan to foster a culture of psychological safety, of civility, and of inclusion within the workplace. So I wanted to start off by sharing with you what I like to call is the uncivil behavior spectrum. And generally, when we look at behavior that's going on in the workplace, what we see is behavior that starts off as minor. It could start off as being rude, unprofessional behavior. So I call these in the behaviors of concern category. I also put in there microaggressions. These are behaviors that are unintentional, happen unconsciously, resulting from your unconscious bias. And so the goal is to create a culture, an environment of psychological safety where we empower employees to disrupt this cycle early in the progression. So we want to equip people with the skills and the tools so they know how to put people on notice in a respectful, professional way to disrupt this cycle. Because if we don't, then the behavior will continue, and pretty soon it'll turn into unwelcome behavior, which is dismissive, unwelcome behavior, non-consensual behavior. If we don't stop it there, it continues to becoming abusive conduct, bullying behavior, and pretty soon, before you know it, it's going to escalate to the illegal behavior category. So the first thing is to create psychological safety within an organization so employees are proactively addressing these situations. I wanted to share some statistics with you. A company that I do some work with, M-Train, they're a culture tech firm. They did some research where they did a sample of over 60,000 employees across 130 organizations. And they found some pretty high correlations between inclusive behaviors within the organization and positive workplace culture. And so despite what we've seen is an increase in organizations actually addressing diversity, inclusion, and civility within their workplaces, research shows that only 33% of employees feel that their leaders in the organization create a sense of belonging for their employees. So we know that there's still a lot of work we need to do. But look at these statistics. It shows that when you have inclusive behaviors by leadership or by employees, it's going to result in positive outcomes. So things like where you have leaders in the organization talking about how diverse perspectives will help us succeed, that's going to result in positive outcomes of the people that I work with. Make an effort to see things from my point of view. When you have inclusive behaviors like people showing empathy, right? And I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about empathy because this becomes such a huge deal, because when we look at what we're doing as part of our comprehensive plan, are we having enough information about what it means to be empathetic? Research shows, and I'll share the link for you for this report when we get back to our other session, but research shows that when coworkers show empathy, that they understand and feel what their other coworkers are, and they're sensitive to what's going on in the workplace, this is going to make people better managers, better coworkers. And you see the positive outcomes that colleagues feel that there is an environment that's respectful, civil, and inclusive. It's a critical skill that I think we need to look at within our organizations that's going to help with communication, connection, loyalty, enhancing individual productivity, team cohesion, and aligning employees' actions and behaviors to the organizational goals. So I think there's a lot of work that we can do with regards to in making sure empathy is a part of our plan. And then the other thing that they found here is that leaders at my company create a sense of belonging. Like I already told you, we have work to do, but when leaders are actually doing that, then employees feel that they're being respected by their teammates. So the other research I wanted to share with you here is this whole dynamics between in-group and out-group findings. Again, I'll share the report with you, but they came up with 3 core findings, key findings related to in-group, out-group that I wanted to share with you. And when we talk about in-group, out-group dynamics, what we're really talking about is that degree to which the us versus them behaviors shape an employee's experience, engagement, and opportunity. So these dynamics can create a source of conflict within the organization when you have organizations that are favoring the in-groups and disadvantaging the people in the out-groups. So the key findings here are that every organization has different in-group, out-group dynamics that impact the workplace employee experience. Out-group employees experience less empathy. They feel that they're being judged more harshly by their coworkers and feel less safe to speak up than their peers. Also, what's important to note is power dynamics. We see that the degree to which the hierarchy and authority shape workplace interactions and influence employee contributions is going to have a huge impact on workplace culture. So oftentimes, what I've seen in my experience is that managers oftentimes don't even realize that their behaviors, their words and actions are creating negative impacts on the environment within their coworkers and the employees that they're managing. And so ongoing disrespect that the manager may not be aware of, or the employees may not be aware of, is obviously going to impact the productivity. That behavior is going to become normalized throughout the culture. And pretty soon what we're going to see is that people are not going to speak up when these situations are happening, when they're dealing with uncivil behavior, which then becomes a huge problem for organizations because they can't do something about addressing those situations if employees are too scared to speak up about these situations. So the third key finding here is that when you have strong positive cultural norms around the areas of diversity, inclusion, psychological safety, that's going to lessen the negativity of the in-group, out-group dynamics. One other thing I'll add is this we want to take a look at the norms and practices of what's going on within an organization, the way that we do things around here. The report found that a lot of employees are finding that they're saying that they have weak corporate cultures. And what they're talking about there is that they feel that their culture is not resilient to help people adapt to social change. And we've gone through a lot of social changes in this past year. So then what we want to really do is strive to create environments where employees feel that they can proactively give feedback to one another, that they feel empowered to redirect insensitive words and actions or incivility that might be happening in the organization, as well as know how to intervene when these situations or these behaviors are happening within the workplace. That's when you're going to have respectful workplace cultures. So every organization, I like to call it the Civility Action Plan. Every organization needs to create a comprehensive plan that includes a lot of the stuff that we talked about here, but also all focused in and about diversity, inclusion, and civility. And all three of those are different, but they all go to this guideline that we're talking about today, dignity. So we want to make sure that we align these three objectives within the organizational mission and values. Clearly define, what does it mean to be civil? What does it mean to be diverse? What does it mean to be inclusive? And then have people, accountability is critical. Align these goals with accountability within the organization at all levels. And really, to fully achieve a culture of psychological safety, every employee needs to be a part of that solution. So they need to be empowered with, there needs to be necessary time, money, resources, but employees themselves need to be empowered to be part of that solution. It can't be a single person's responsibility. To be effective, responsibility needs to be shared throughout the entire organization. So thank you very much for this presentation. I know that it was short, but I will share with you, there are some resources here that you can have access to. Happy to share my PowerPoint presentation, and I'll be providing you with the link to that report as we get back to the other session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sejal. Call to action to all of the attendees. Please go to www.workplacesuicideprevention.com and take the pledge to make suicide prevention a health and safety priority.